How's it going, everyone? It's Savi for Mother SpongeBob. Today is June 18th, 2021, and today we're going to focus on potential Tropical Cyclone 3, which will likely become Tropical Storm Claudette, and we're going to focus on its landfall, where it'll make landfall, and what impacts you should experience as Tropical Storm Claudette will make landfall in the Louisiana coast later tonight or into early tomorrow. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more about Lake calls. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more about Lake calls. So let's begin by taking a look at the current water vapor imagery for the Gulf of Mexico at this time, and of course this is potential tropical cyclone 3, and you see that there's an extending area of thunderstorms all throughout the Gulf of Mexico at this time. However, you could clearly tell that it isn't the most organized system in the world, and in fact you could argue it looks fairly disorganized for what would be a tropical storm, because we do see that the storm is very lopsided. If I were to show you this picture with no context, you would probably assume that the eye would be right around this point. However, the eye is right around here, which is just to the west of all this convection that's going on to the east of the center of circulation. And while the western side of the storm is completely dry, we do have a little bit of an upper level low that I've been talking to you guys about over the past several days. That's imposing a lot of wind shear over this storm right now, and it's bringing strong southwesterly winds, which is pushing a lot of this thunderstorm activity further into the northeast, which means that the just to the west of the center of circulation, it's very dry at this point, and not a lot of convection is going on because these strong upper level winds are also bringing that very dry continental air into the Gulf of Mexico, and it's getting entrained into the storm, which is preventing the storm from really strengthening into anything more than just a weak tropical storm at this point. And in terms of its wind speed right now, it has maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour, and it's currently called potential tropical cyclone 3. Now you might be wondering, well, why is it called a potential tropical cyclone 3 and not tropical storm Claudette? Because we do have maximum sustained winds of 45 miles per hour, which is more than enough to be considered a tropical storm at that point. Well, it's because we don't really have the National Hurricane Center hasn't really detected a closed center of circulation just yet, because like I showed you, the center of circulation is right here, and it's very dry, and it's not really identifying a full rotation or full center of circulation just yet, a fully formed center of circulation just yet. However, it's very likely that eventually later tonight we will see it develop somewhat of a center of circulation to be considered tropical storm Claudette, and it's pretty much almost inevitable that it will become that this will be called tropical storm Claudette once this storm gets a little bit better organized moving northward. However, I do expect the wind speeds to stay mainly the same because it won't really strengthen under the strong wind shear and the dry air that's to the west of this storm. So we need to keep a close eye on that. And in terms of the precipitation right now that's going on for the Gulf Coast, you see that a lot of rain is currently happening in New Orleans. I'd call it a downpour at this point. Let me refresh this actually, because it is a little outdated from when I loaded this radar up. So zooming in back into the radar, you're gonna see that the rain is extending through the Gulf Coast, and you see we still have the heavy downpour all throughout New Orleans. We have the heavy rain throughout the Gulf Coast states, and we have rain extending to Mobile, Alabama as well. And you see all the rain is towards the east of the center of circulation. So even if you're very far from the center of circulation, let's say the Panhandle of Florida, you likely will get some of the most rainfall out of this, because all the convection is focused on the eastern side, while the western side of the storm is completely dry for the most part, and you see just heavy rain, heavy downpour at this point, and that certainly raises a concern of flash flooding, because when we're seeing heavy rainfall this heavy, downpouring this high, it's gonna be just cause a lot of flooding throughout the Gulf Coast states. And and it certainly is. There's certainly a high possibility we could see flash flooding throughout the Gulf Coast. So you guys need to pay close attention to this, especially if you live near a close creek, because those are very prone to flash flooding as a result of just the smaller channels that are within creeks, which accelerates rainfall or the stream flow in creeks, which accelerates the chance of flash flooding. So you guys need to pay close attention to this because flash flooding should be expected. In terms of what to expect when it comes to the strength of the storm, again, I don't expect any strengthening, if at all. To be honest, there's still that possibility it could maybe weaken before it makes landfall, or maybe strengthen slightly before it makes landfall. But at this point, I think the current strength of where it is right now is gonna be its landfall, is gonna be the strength at landfall. So I'd expect right around a 45-mile-per-hour storm to make landfall in Louisiana, because while the warmer than average sea surface temperatures are definitely favoring this storm, it's also again dealing with a lot of wind shear at this point, and it's dealing with a decent amount of dry air, so it's going to be very difficult for this to strengthen before it makes landfall. And plus, it doesn't have much time over water, because taking a look again at the projected path of this, you see that there's only a couple hours before it makes landfall. This right around very early on Saturday. I'm talking about like 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. Saturday, and you see that we aren't very it isn't very far from landfall, and within only around four or around like a 5 to 6 hour time span, it isn't going to strengthen much, especially with the dry air and the wind shear that's over it at this point. So I don't expect much strengthening. But one thing to note is how large wind field is of this storm on the eastern side, especially, while the western side is completely non-existent, which is a reason why it's still being called potential tropical cyclone 3, because it's still way too lopsided to be considered a tropical storm. But eventually the National Hurricane Center does expect the winds to eventually wrap around the western side of this eye to be considered tropical storm Claudette, even if it's just a very small area on the western side of the eye where you're going to experience winds. So keep that in mind, that the eastern side will be the side that will be impacted the most from this storm. In terms of the current wind speed, right now over the Gulf Coast states, as the eye is projected to make landfall, you see that we're seeing sustained winds. I wouldn't say very strong at this point. Along the coast, we do see winds hovering around 15 miles per hour. We do have an area where it's 17. New Orleans right now, we do have areas where it's up to 25. So that's quite strong. Be careful, especially with those loose things. Make sure to bring those loose things inside. While this won't be a major wind event at all, it's still important to at least like bring those loose things inside, because they could easily damage your property, and that's something you certainly do not want to underestimate. It. You see the winds off the coast are a bit stronger. We do see wind readings pretty much hovering around 25 to 30 miles per hour, which is quite strong for sustained winds, and I'd expect the wind gusts will be higher than that, closer to 40 to maybe even 50 miles per hour in some areas. And there could be isolated power outages, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be very widespread, because like I said, this isn't a very strong storm. It's likely only going to make landfall around 45 miles per hour, and it won't really strengthen rapidly before landfall. So as a result, I don't expect this to be a huge wind maker, but at least, or a widespread power outage, but at least make sure to bring those loose things inside, because they could easily blow around and damage your property. So keep that in mind throughout the Gulf Coast, extending to the Panhandle of Florida as well. In terms of the warnings, you see tropical storm warnings are issued from southern Louisiana all the way to the Panhandle of Florida, despite the eye being all the way to the west of the Panhandle of Florida. So this really shows how large wind field is on the eastern side of the storm. And while the winds aren't strong, it still will impact the Panhandle of Florida, despite being a relatively weak storm. So make sure to keep in mind of that. And in terms of the storm surge potential over the Gulf Coast states, you see that 1 to 2 feet is expected closer to western Louisiana, the western Louisiana coast, and then you see it. We have max storm surge of 2 to 3 feet right around Louisiana and extending to the Mississippi Gulf Coast as well. And if you're wondering what exactly is storm surge, the storm surge is pretty much storm surge is, let's say you stand on an area that's close to the shore over dry ground. If you add just add 2 to 3 feet of water on top of that, and that's a storm surge or the amount of flooding you should expect along the coast where it's typically dry. So keep in mind, it only takes 6 inches of swiftly moving water to knock you off your feet, and 2 feet could move a car. And in a lot of areas throughout Louisiana and pretty much the entire Gulf Coast of Mississippi, 2 to 3 feet of storm surge is expected. So you need to think that there's that possibility that if you're exposed to this storm surge, that your car could move in 2 to 3 feet of water, as it's certainly possible. And this extends to Mobile Bay as well. So if you're along the coast, you need to pay close attention to this. Even if it's only 2-3 feet of water, I know the Mississippi Gulf Coast has experienced far worse, such as Katrina, where that storm surge was an insane 28 feet. How it's going to be nowhere near that much, but still, you do not want to underestimate 2 to 3 feet, because like I said, it's enough to move a car and could completely destroy your first floor or the basement floors of your house. So keep that in mind if you're very close to the coastline, because that is another threat you guys need to pay close attention to. In terms of my forecasted and projected path and the strength forecasts, like I said, I do not expect this to strengthen or really weaken before it makes landfall. Maybe it might weaken or maybe strengthen just slightly, but it won't be enough to make a major difference in terms of the impacts, as the impacts are pretty much inevitable that you're gonna experience heavy rain throughout the Gulf Coast at this point. In terms of the rainfall forecast, you should expect you see that there's a large area where 6 to 10 inches of rain is expected for the Panhandle of Florida, for Mobile, Alabama, and extending to the Mississippi Gulf Coast as well. And New Orleans is involved in 2 to 4 inches of rain, as it is just more than enough rain to cause flooding throughout the Gulf Coast states, and even extending further northward in the southeast, where Atlanta is forecasted to receive 4 to 6 inches of rain, which is just a lot of rain to expect for the Atlanta area, and this extends even further northward. So keep in mind that we're just going to experience just heavy rain from this. Flooding is likely, and potentially major flooding is expected in some areas, so keep a close eye on that. And like I said, in terms of projected path, I don't expect this to weaken until it makes landfall Saturday PM. It should maintain the tropical storm force strength at 40 miles per hour, but then gradually weaken as it moves northward, as of course it loses contact with the water, so the friction increases, and we begin to see more warmer water in the it begins to lose contact with the water in the Gulf of Mexico. So keep that in mind throughout the Gulf Coast. So yeah, guys, make sure to prepare all along the Gulf Coast. It is expected to be quite a major event when it comes to flooding, and I want you guys to stay safe, and my hearts go out to all of you along the Gulf Coast impacted by this. But anyways, guys, I thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather accounts. Make sure to like if you like this video. Make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content, and I hope you guys have a good day.